On today's episode of The Glue Guys, wow, Brian, emergency bod. Goran Dragic is a Brooklyn Net. Very exciting. We're talking about Goran's impact, Steve Nash's recruiting efforts, and also I have a thing about Ben Simmons I need to say.
Wow.
And I think we all need to hear.
Love it.
Welcome back to The Glue Guys. This is Mike here. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
Check us out on Twitter at BKGlueGuys, Netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself behind the paywall at theathletic.com/glueguys. A subsidiary of the New York Times, Brian. Hey.
Mike, did they tell you to say that, or is that's a natural?
It's in our contract.
That's in the contract.
I don't know if people know this. So the Athletic got bought by the New York Times for $500 million. $450 million of that was the Glue Guys.
We were big. We were in the war room. We were mostly responsible for that deal.
There were a lot of wraps and hummus plates. A lot of cold coffee.
I was like,
we got the deal done.
Is this vegan hummus? Because I won't touch it if not.
Hummus is part of the deal.
Hummus is vegan. Mike, we have news today. There's news. Forget all this hummus talk.
News bell.
Yeah.
Wow. Actually, whoa. Are my levels like crazy bad for you?
They went up and down. I think we're okay. We're good.
Okay.
Write it out.
Very exciting news. If you're listening to this by now, you already know it. It's in the title of this episode, so it's not like we're surprising you by this. Not a spoiler alert. Goran Dragic, one of the longtime successful point guards from the Phoenix Suns, and most notably the Miami Heat, he has decided to sign with your Brooklyn Nets, Brian.
He did do that, didn't he?
How do you feel? Give me your feelings,
I feel,
your thoughts.
I'm glad. So I'll say like this. So for the first time ever, we waited until news happened to then podcast. I feel matured. And in a lot of ways, it's a parallel to how Goran Dragic must feel being on his first truly taking the pay cut to join the championship title team. It's just, it's an elder statesman role. He's a great candidate for it. I'm thrilled, Mike. I'm thrilled to be sharing the spotlight with Goran Dragic in this moment. It's a get. It's a big get. There's no two ways about it. People were coming, there was a big thing in the hullabaloo about the Bucks getting him. That seemed possible or whatever. And we just, we get what we want, Mike. That's who the Nets are these days, okay? It doesn't matter all this riffraff about James Harden wanting to leave because of taxes and weather. Goran Dragic understands the bigger picture, and I think he made a smart decision here, Mike. How do you feel?
Yeah, it's funny because even as there's all this like, oh, the Nets locker room is awful. Kyrie pushed out James Harden in a way. It's a disaster over there. There's so much discord. Guys still want to play in Brooklyn. They just want to play here. They want to succeed. They want to do well. They decide Goran Dragic was the most desired buyout candidate in this season. Each year now there's like one guy, right, that comes out. He was the guy. And it's funny if we retrace the steps. The stories begin, of course, the trade deadline, he gets traded to, I believe, Toronto. Or he was in Toronto and gets traded to San Antonio.
He did like 5 games in Toronto, yeah.
He did 5 games to Toronto to start the year. So, by the way, if anyone sees statistics on Goran Dragic this year is averaging 8 points and 1 assist and 1 rebound, those are 5 games. And even at that time, I think he knew he probably wasn't going to be playing along for the team. So let's not count those stats. Let's look deeper into his past. But it came out, Adrian Wojnarowski, and this is no shots at Woj. He's great at his job. But he immediately came out with his tweets of the Milwaukee Bucks are front runners to get Goran Dragic. They're going to do everything they can to get Goran. So is those kind of aggressive? There's times when Woj is tweeting something not from his opinion, but because he wants to push a line from a general manager or even an agent, right? And it felt like it was very aggressive Woj tweeting in like support of the Milwaukee Bucks getting Goran Dragic. Why he does that, I don't really know in this circumstance. And I got a little sad because I was so excited for Goran Dragic. You and I discussed, I believe we discussed in the James Harden, Ben Simmons trade. We literally immediately talked about Dragic going to the Nets and how great that would be. So I was very sad that he wasn't going to be here. And then Mark Stein and I think a few others write stories the day before today, writing about, oh my gosh, Steve Nash is making a personal plea to his ex-backup point guard, Goran Dragic. And wow, Steve Nash got his man.
Hey, Gordy.
So exciting.
Hey, Gordy, how you doing, bud? That's I was just going right into Glue Guys Theater.
Yeah, Brian and I aren't going to do.
We're not going to do
I'm not
it.
as. So Brian could nail both the Canadian accent and the Slovenian. I know you can.
A boot?
Right.
I don't.
I think you could. I think you can do it by yourself. I think this could be a one-man show.
The Canadian one is I just go to a Minnesotan version. I just go, oh hey bud, want some pop? You know, that's where
You love pop is your
Pop.
like keystone for
yeah,
a lot of
Minnesota,
your
little pop.
northern Midwest
They
accents.
drink pop.
Why don't you pull up a chair, get a pop,
Yeah, so you got it.
and Slovenian. I mean, we all could do. We've all seen Taken,
Yeah, you just go Russian.
all-
I mean, you just throw it right into the Russian bin.
but it didn't feel right at this moment with Russia and Ukraine to be
True,
doing a Russian
true.
accent on the show.
Yeah, the bastards.
So we're not going to do Glue Guys Theater, but
Okay.
Steve Nash got his guy.
Yeah, got his man.
This is a big deal for basketball.
Mike, and this is, again, after James Harden dragged Brooklyn's name through the mud on the way out the door, and here I am paying too much in rent, can't park my car anywhere, it's cold, you go outside for a
God
walk.
damn it, it's cold out
It's
there.
cold as
Can't
heck,
park my
bud.
car.
It's, colder than a
Trying
witch's.
to pop open my pop.
Yeah, it's like in Fargo in the scene where William H Macy, like his father-in-law, like rejects his deal and like takes it from him or whatever, and he's just like scraping the ice off his windshield. I'm reminded now, why I pay so much rent. It's because and wait for the subway and can't park my car. It's because I get Goran Dragic in the buyout season. Okay, that's why I do it. It's because my team gets Goran Dragic in February when it's time to get buyout candidates.
Is
Right?
that on the brochure to Brooklyn? You won't be able to park, but you'll get buyouts.
You get your buyouts. You get your Blake Griffins and your Goran Dragic's.
I will. The basketball. It is exciting. I think there are some people that are underrating this because they hadn't watched Goran in a number of years. It's been a few years since he was like the leading man in Miami for those teams. But here's who I remember of him. I'm not even referencing him like many, many years ago when it looked like he was a max candidate, which I think he basically got the max when he went from Phoenix to Miami.
I know his
Pretty
last
sure.
year on his last contract was $19 million, so I don't know
Where that falls in the fault lines of the NBA. But he is a pick and roll maestro. He's an off-ball shooter. He can actually he's a good enough point guard that he can push Kyrie or Patty Mills or Ben Simmons, anyone else off the ball to let them do off-ball work. He can relieve that pressure in a big way, but he also can play off the ball. So if there's times when, Kyrie's handling it or Kevin Durant's handling it, which they're going to be most of the time, Goran's a really solid three-point shooter. He has been over his career. I could pull up the statistics. I do have them in front of me.
Oh,
But
look at
he
you.
averages 13.9 points and 4.8 assists. And shooting splits have been just a year ago. This was just a year ago. 43% from the field, 37% from three, 83% from the free throw line. He's always been a slightly above average to a very good shooter from season to season.
Mm-hmm.
That is a perfect piece. This team needed a ball. Don't you think that I thought they needed like another true ball handler, and Javon Carter, who was cut, wasn't going to be cutting it.
That was, we talk about D. Sloan. Javon Carter, I feel like in years to come will be, part of the whatever that milieu of Nets point guards have been.
What's
Shout
a
out to
there's a
Javon
Hall
Carter.
of Fame.
Yeah.
It's not a Hall of Shame. It's just a
feel-
a stairwell of mediocrity.
I love guys like that. I love that Javon Carter never lost faith in himself. He was the same guy from beginning to end. Bless up to Javon. So no disrespecting him on the way out. But it is an upgrade. It is an upgrade, a bona fide upgrade for sure. And as we talked about earlier, the role is particularly well suited for Goran because of this. We don't want to go into mandates or whatever. Let's not get derailed. But because one of our star players is not playing home games, he's in a very interesting spot in his career where he is like one season removed from having like an insanely notable bubble season. Like he was one of the reasons that Miami Heat fans will say that they got to the finals that year in the bubble year. So like he was maybe peaking at like 33, 34. He had one other not as good season in which they got swept by the Bucks in the playoffs. So it didn't persist. And there is some like, has the injuries caught up with him, so on and so forth. But it's a nice fit because of how many minutes are on the table as like basically a starter, to kind of exercise all the options to see if there is just a little bit of, weird Chris Paul old man magic still left in the Dragon. Like, it's a good fit.
Yeah, and that's exciting. And shout out to, I think it's at Taz, Jason Tazlodides, I believe it is. Brooklyn finally got their Swamp Dragon. Of course, Goran Dragic goes by the nickname Dragon. And it's exciting that the Nets finally have a Swamp Dragon. I think part of the Steve Nash, so we believe that the Steve Nash pitch was highly influential.
Oh,
right?
I think it was the reason. They were best buds for a minute.
And we talked about this on our show, and I think Steve listens, so I appreciate shout out friend of the show, Steve Nash.
Yep.
Hey, buddy. He part of the pitch, whether the vaccination status, like you talked about, is Kyrie's not getting vaccinated, but whether the mandates open up or not. Hey, Goran, you may be the starter. You may be starting for the Brooklyn Nets for more than half of their games for the rest of the year, maybe into the round 1 and round 2 of the playoffs.
Yeah.
That is so. Why buyout guys take certain positions? It's connections to a certain team or the role that they're going to have. Because for the most part, the money, there's no like difference in money. Goran was being offered a minimum contract across the league. Everyone was giving him a minimum deal because everyone's above the cap. So there's nothing else to offer Goran Dragic. You can offer him this minimum deal and you say, but here's these other things. The other things is the playing time, the role. And I think this team needed, so where I put Goran is in that Patty Mills class. Where like when the Nets signed Patty Mills, it felt so correct because he brings a certain like joie de vivre to the team in a really big way.
I didn't know you spoke French.
He's got cojones.
And Spanish.
This is a multilingual deal.
Wow, you're a real Renaissance man.
And it was a real carpe diem, for the Nets.
Latin, a dead language. You're a genius. Brilliant.
It was a. There's I don't know if you can hear the
truck?
smoke alarms.
Oh, good.
Going out. Smoke alarms going off
Perfect.
in my in-laws' kitchen in the basement.
That'll happen.
I have a crazy
Little midday
I have
bacon.
a shtetl here.
What are you guys making here? Got the flat top cooking?
I'm not sure, but where my office is above their kitchen, and
So
I
you might-
smell everything they cook.
Yeah.
Which is not.
Stay safe out there, Mike. Don't just don't just burn up for the podcast, okay?
Patty Mills is a winner, and he's won a championship. Goran has not won a championship, but I put him in the winner category. Like, there were 2 point guards that were out there, Goran and Eric Bledsoe. Eric Bledsoe, actually, if Eric Bledsoe's mentally okay and ready to handle the moment, is maybe a more useful point guard because he's a better defender at this point in his career. He's a bigger body. He's an athletic marvel. But he hasn't been very good, and he's been awful in the playoffs. Goran is 35, 36 years old.
35.
And, there could be a chance that he's actually done, and we're just not prepared for it.
Yeah.
But I would rather bet on that winning pedigree than, what's Eric Bledsoe really going to give this team?
And in hindsight, too, like looking back at this in chorus with the James Harden thing, I like going into the second half of the season with a little bit of, even if it's old guy, new energy, it's like new guy energy, even on the nights where, just going, like I went to that Wizards game, which was fun. But it was like, it's like, oh, this is going to peter out if we don't get an influx of some kind of new energy person to watch. Like Seth Curry and Andre Drummond were good, were fun to watch for the first 2 or 3 games or whatever, but it's like we need more of that energy to kind of like bolster this thing into, because we actually need wins at this point. That's what I'm sort of trying to say. We can't like just continue to not win games. I feel like the unproven or new team energy of Ben Simmons. I mean, obviously he's got a whole project that's bigger than what Goran's working on, but just having a lot of that new guy energy, I feel like is super helpful, and also it's helpful for us as fans to continue to stay engaged because, like as we've been talking about, it is really hard to watch these home games at times, just knowing that there is a voluntary absence here that informs a lot of it, and you sense a weird like drain at those games. It's hard to describe, and having gone to a couple of them now, it is like kind of palpable. It's like these aren't the real games.
Yeah. I think that is gonna shift.
I think so too.
I think Kevin Durant. We should say his grandmother passed away, and condolences to Kevin. So we don't know if Durant. I had believed before then that Durant was going to come back in this first game post All-Star break, and I thought Ben Simmons would be playing this first game Thursday night TNT against the Celtics. I thought that he would be playing. He's on the court. We know that he is on the court. Kyrie's there. Obviously, Kyrie's not going to play a home game against Boston. I think once Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons are on the floor, there's going to be a jolt of energy.
Yeah.
But you're right that this team, like, they need to win basketball games. They're currently 8th right now in the East. They are 2.5 up over the Charlotte Hornets, who was the 9th seed. They are 2 back of the Toronto Raptors, and they are 2.5 back from the Boston Celtics, who are the 6th seed. They played the Celtics twice in a matter of like 2 weeks, essentially. One game's on the road, one game's at home. So those are important games. They also play the Raptors twice in a back-to-back on a Monday and a Tuesday. Mm-hmm. One's in Toronto and one's at home. And Kyrie's not going to play in either of those because he can't go over the border. Let's do this real quick. Let's take a quick break, and coming back, we're going to wrap up. I have a Ben Simmons thought for you.
Okay, great.
And we're back, Bri. Any other Goran Dragic thoughts before we get to Ben Simmons?
I'm all out. Fresh out of takes.
Okay, here's my Ben Simmons thing, and I just want to say this. It's an important thing to say while we're all here in this moment. Okay?
Oh.
There's a psychological effect when a guy like Ben Simmons joins your team. Okay? The psychological effect, particularly in the way that James Harden basically threw up all over the Nets fans on his way out of town.
Threw up.
Is to the guy that the Nets are getting, that's our guy now. We're going to defend him. Particularly in this moment. This is a very heated trade from both sides. I don't know if you saw, I was watching when the Ben Simmons press conference when he was sitting next to Steve Nash and Sean Marks. I was watching on NBC Sports Philly, and the comment section on there was disgusting about Ben Simmons. Like it was horrific. Okay. Like the live stream of it on the YouTube, there's the comments thread. It was disgusting. They hate Ben Simmons. I do understand why they do. A lot of it's like completely gross, but I understand it. We hate James Harden.
What?
Because he.
I got no hate in my heart. I'm a Christian, like through and through, and I have no hate in my heart.
Yeah. Sorry. Apologies, Reverend.
Yeah. You dare?
So I understand there's like this natural feeling to defend Ben Simmons on all fronts. He's our guy. Nets fans did it with D'Angelo Russell. They did it with Kyrie Irving. They did it with James Harden. And now they're doing it with Ben Simmons. I'm not saying this isn't to say we shouldn't give this person a chance. Give him a chance. Fresh start. Part of the great thing about coming to a new team is that they have a fresh start with the fan base. The fan base is a fresh start with them. We can begin to appreciate their game. I remember what it was like when James Harden came to Brooklyn and he was playing the game the right way, sharing the ball, being unselfish. And you and I had many conversations on this podcast, the Glue Guys, about how great it was to appreciate James Harden because for so many years, watching those Rockets teams, they were the most boring team in the NBA.
Yeah.
It was disgusting to watch.
Yeah,
it was fun to appreciate James Harden. All I want to say about Ben Simmons is like, let's appreciate him. Let's support him, right? Give him support. Okay. But we don't have to be his public defenders. We don't have to be going to Manhattan Criminal Court defending Ben Simmons in the Twitter Public Court of Appeals.
Yeah. I feel like you're talking directly to me because I went way out on a limb when we got Kyrie Irving. I was like, he's a chill bro based on one interview. And there's parts of that I don't agree with anymore. But what I took. But
what's your Kyrie Irving feelings now?
I mean, chill is not. I wouldn't say chill. That's not how I would describe him. But
no, how would you describe
him? Don't do this to me, Mike.
What do you think about him? I don't know. I don't talk to you that much.
Oh, I think he's Mike, you know what I think of Mike. Don't do this.
He's a free thinker,
but
right?
I like what
thinker.
you're saying, because I watched some guy on Twitter put a James Harden jersey in a trash compactor and be like, yeah, F that jersey. And it's like, you know what? He wasn't around long enough to really build that type of a. It's just an interesting symbolic thing to like wear a guy's jersey, and then when you get rid of him, like, yeah, I wanted to love you forever, and then I can't now. It's a really strange compulsion. That I've never been that far. Plus, also like 20 years from now, that Harden jersey is going to be like funny. That's a cool jersey to have in the quiver. You know, if you're still collecting in 20 years.
Yeah, I've thought about like, do I hop in and buy the discount Harden jersey just because I do want to have that? But really, it was such an ugly exit. I'm not that interested in having the Harden.
See,
I don't know what a comparable is.
Did we ever have this like big enough of a version of this fight where like I just don't blame James Harden for leaving at all? Like I just don't. I don't hate. I have no qualms with his impatience for leaving.
You have none.
There's zero. The only thing that I disliked was that there was the taxes and the weather thing about New York. That's
that made you mad.
That was the only thing that grinded.
Because you're a big taxes guy. You love taxes.
I love a high tax rate. You know, people. It's an unpopular position, but I like to keep it nice and high, especially for the working man. I like to give it nice and high.
Can I just say this podcast started with you complaining about parking and subways, and now you like high taxes? Where's your tax money going, Brian?
I want it to be more efficient. That's all I can say.
Sure.
I have the same amount of lack of patience for other people. Like if somebody's making my life hard, like in the way that like Kyrie is for James Harden, it's like moving on. That's it. I'm over it. I'm not going to stick around for you to figure things out. You know, whatever.
Well, I am surprised. You know, we talked so much about Kyrie trades over the season. There was never a discussion near the trade deadline of. It seemed obvious. James Harden was upset with the Kyrie Irving situation. He was upset that Kyrie wasn't going to become a full-time player. And if he's upset about that, that's only on how Kyrie handled it, because the Nets had no ability to make Kyrie a full-time player. They made him a part-time player, right? They had no ability to give him a shot. That was up to Kyrie Irving. So I'm surprised that there was never like a moment where they did say, like Kevin Durant, Steve Nash, and James Harden have a meeting, and they said, hey, James, if we trade Kyrie, will you be happy? If we trade him for like something decent, like let's say Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley, would you be okay staying? You know, and if they could say, he was like, yes, give me full-time players. That's all I want. And if they had done that, but that was never a discussion.
It's like in my mind, like I think it's like if somebody's being unreasonable, then there's like it's just it puts everybody in a bad position. But anyways, this is supposed to be about Simmons. We can't go and actually this is kind of related to this though, because you have qualms about James Harden leaving that I don't, and yet you're trying to say we should not have qualms about Ben Simmons if the Ben Simmons thing doesn't work out. Is that where that is?
No,
headed?
yeah. So what I'm saying is, I use the phrase to you, God him up. Okay,
God him up.
Is
that a phrase that's out there, or did you make that up?
I think I'm a originator of idioms.
It's a really nice one.
Yeah, is that what an idiom is?
I don't
or
think
am
so.
I an idiot of idioms?
Whoa,
sorry.
Michael.
There's a natural inclination to sort of put people on pedestals when they come to your team, a superstar level guy, like we did with Kyrie. He's misunderstood. Look, his teammates always love him. Whenever he leaves a place, the Boston Celtics are still hugging him when he comes to play in Boston. I think we can justifiably say the Kyrie experience is what it is. He's an incredibly gifted player. He can be beloved in the locker room, but he makes personal decisions which affect an entire team, and he's unreliable. Ben Simmons, he's coming into this team. I'm excited about who he is as a basketball player. I think there's a good chance it's not going to be smooth sailing. I think there's a very good chance there's going to be some personal issue between him and whether it's Steve Nash at some point or another player. Not like a bad one. It just won't be like he's not the perfect person. And we tend to sort of look at these guys who come into our team and say we forgive their sins and look at only their possibilities when we should trust of who they are. Like a person will tell you who they are. They'll show you who they are through their actions, right? Through Ben Simmons' actions, he's also kind of an unreliable person. So we should accept that. And this is about expectations. right? We as a fan base should have expectations that it's not going to be perfect. So then you have to accept that it's not going to be perfect. And if you're ready for sort of a rocky road, if I could pick an ice cream flavor,
Okay.
you're going to be happier than if you're expecting perfection. You know what I mean? I know I'm not really crystallizing.
No,
a
it's
point like
it's
a,
interesting.
Like a fine
It's
ginger.
it's not a kind of it's a tough one to crystallize too, because I mean I do think my assessment of Ben Simmons, and I know we got to go here. You get a hard out at 4. We're getting into. Should we just actually end it? Should we just let's just end it?
Give me your final thought.
I think that Ben Simmons came about his asserting his boundaries so uncomfortably. I don't actually believe that. I think he's experimenting with being the rooster, the alpha, and I don't think he comes by that naturally. That's not my sense of him. So I'd actually be surprised if he wasn't gonna fall into rank here under Kevin Durant's leadership. But I think it's actually kind of better for the whole situation. Now there's just no confusion about who's the rooster in this barnyard, Mike. Whereas Harden, I think, felt that was unclear, and maybe rightly so, based on how everything was going. So, anyways, that's all to say. I agree with you that in general, just as a life principle, not to deify people. I think that's what you mean by godding up.
Godding up.
Yeah,
it's a real word for that. Exactly.
It came to me and I was excited to use it. But anyways, So agreed on all points except for the fact that you don't like James Harden anymore, which is I think you're getting distracted. You're getting distracted. The only thing to not like about him is that he talked bad about our tax rates. I tell you, I love where our tax rates are. I love them. I love those tax rates. Mike, get us out of here.
All right, thank you all so much for listening. This was a super fun pod. We're going to talk so much more about the Nets coming up this week.
Just a quick one.
Nets, Celtics. Hopefully we find out what's going on with Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons before that Celtics game. I guarantee if they play, we'll have a pod.
Yahoo.
Right afterwards. Find us on Twitter at BKGlueGuys, Netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself under the paywall at theathletic.com/GlueGuys. Subsidiary of the New York Times. Brian.
Michael, we're out of here. Bye.